Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my podcast. Today, I'm going to talk about the value of contentment. Since we talked about gratitude last week, I thought it only made sense to continue the conversation this week by talking about contentment because contentment goes hand in hand with gratitude. The more grateful we are for the things that we have, the more likely we will be content with them. Because when you're grateful for something, you just naturally feel much more content with your whole situation. And the reason why it's important to kind of think about contentment and practice contentment is because it impacts not only our mental health, but also our financial health. When we wind up being discontent and unhappy with our current situation, we can often wind up making poor financial decisions, like trying to upgrade our lifestyle or, maybe just spending money without putting much thought into it before we can actually afford to do those things. Well, obviously we would never want to spend money without putting much thought into it, whether we can afford it or not. But even like with lifestyle upgrades, we can tend to kind of push ourselves further than we're really ready for, just because of the fact that we're kind of feeling discontent. So, instead of kind of being grateful and content with what we currently have, you can kind of wind up in a situation where you're constantly looking for the next best thing. And being content allows us to kind of take time and put thought into lifestyle upgrades without just kind of jumping into them and then getting ourselves in a situation that isn't ideal. But before we continue with this topic, real quick, I just want to say I got another 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much. The rating is it's just random letters, so I'm not going to even attempt to read it, but or at least I think it's random letters. But anyway, the heading says positive and practical, and it says we'll definitely be listening weekly for tips and inspiration. So thank you so much to whoever left this review. Like I said, I check almost daily to see if I got a new review, and when I receive one, I have to show everyone in my family. I'm so excited. I'm actually up to 50 reviews now, so that made me really happy to kind of hit like a little like mini benchmark, kind of like a whole round number. 50 reviews seems like pretty good. So I really appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone who has left reviews and everyone who's even just listening, of course. But thank you so much. If you do have time and you haven't had a chance to leave a rating and review yet, I would really appreciate it. It really does help me get the show out to a bigger audience. So anyway, so thank you so much for that. So back to our topic. So I do want to point out, though, that contentment does not mean complacent. The idea of being content does not mean that we need to be complacent with our lives. Being content just means that we're at peace with our current situation, but it doesn't mean that we can't have dreams of improving ourselves. It doesn't mean that we can't dream of a nicer car or a renovated kitchen. But what it does mean is that until it's the right time to have those things, if it ever is, depending on the things we're dreaming on, we're happy with our life as it is. So we might aspire to certain things, a nicer, like I said, like a nicer car, or upgrade to our home, or a different home, or different vacations, or whatever we might aspire to. It doesn't mean we can't be happy with our current situation. It would be a shame to never enjoy where you're at right now because you're so focused on where you want to get. There's so much to enjoy along the way as you are trying to achieve different things. So being content means you're happy with where you are right now, even though you may want to get to other things at a certain point in time. So I think there's kind of like that balance where sometimes people think that being content means you just have to be like, well, I'm happy with what I'm doing right now, and if I want to do better things in the future, it means that I'm not content. But that's not true. You can be content and happy with where you are right now and still want to aspire to different things in the future. And one thing to kind of think about when we're thinking about contentment is that you can only one-up so many times. Like, one of the great things about contentment is that there's only so much bigger and better. If we're always trying to upgrade things that were once fun, and special, and because they've now become the norm, then we need to look for more things that are fun and special. And it's kind of like everybody uses like lattes as an example for so many things, like with budgeting and with whatever. So here's an example of what I'm trying to say using like a latte. So say if every Friday you celebrate and you get yourself a latte, it feels like a really special treat because it's something that like you only do on Fridays, and it's like just a little something to treat yourself. But if you decide to start getting a latte every day of the week, the one on Friday is not going to be special anymore. If you want something special for Friday to celebrate that day, now you're going to need to add something new or something additional. So what you did is you wound up turning your special Friday latte into nothing special anymore. So now you have to one-up yourself. So by being content with your current practice of the Friday latte and making that like a special day, you're not going to find yourself looking for something new to celebrate that day, unless you want to like switch it up with something different, maybe an alternative that's somewhat relative. But it's more just kind of thinking about the things that you do and the things that you have that are special to you, and kind of appreciating what those are and not trying to make them always be more. Because at some point there's going to be a limit to how much upgrading you can do, unless you're like extremely rich. And even if you are like very, very rich, would you really want to live always searching for something that's bigger and better instead of being happy with what you have? Because like I said, there's only so much more and bigger and better you can do, and it's so much nicer to be enjoying what we have now while we have what we have now, and not just constantly be on the search of something new. So that's kind of what contentment is and why it's so valuable to us. So some ways to kind of be more content with your life is one thing that's really important is to watch comparison. So just because someone has something you see as being bigger or better than what you have, just remember that you're not necessarily seeing the whole picture. And even if you are seeing the whole picture, there's always going to be someone with bigger and better things than you have. If you look for them, there will always be someone with more, a cleaner house, a nicer house, a prettier whatever, I don't know, purse. I don't know, that's the first thing that comes to mind. But there's always going to be, always going to be someone with bigger and better things. So, you can make yourself feel discontent because you feel like there's something lacking in your life because other people have these things. And like I said, if someone's posting a picture on Instagram of their like sparkly clean kitchen, they're posting it because it's a sparkly clean kitchen, not because that's their norm. So you don't be comparing yourself thinking like you're not doing a good enough job at certain aspects of your life because you see other people that appear to have it better. Because like I said, you're seeing a point in time and you're not always seeing the whole picture. And again, if you are seeing the whole picture, who cares? There's always going to be someone with more. And there's nothing wrong with looking at what others have or wanting to have some of those things. But it's just that when it leads to a point that you're unhappy with your current situation, that's when we might really need to kind of create a better balance between being happy with what we have and having aspirations for the future. By being mindful about how we react to the things we see, we can wind up making it better for ourselves by just being happy for others for those things. And maybe we want to have those things too at some point in life, but we don't have to feel discontent with our current situation. Another thing that we need to think about that can lead to discontentment is a feeling of entitlement. So especially if we're going through a really difficult or stressful time in our lives, we can start to develop an entitled mindset. We might start to feel entitled to have more because of what we're currently going through. And it can be really easy to feel like we deserve to upgrade our lives or treat ourselves in excess to make up for the hard time we're going through. And this can really wind up making us feel discontent with our current situation because we just don't feel like it's enough. We can start to think that we deserve more than what we currently have because of the fact we're going through a rough time. And going through rough times, it can really be even more important to really take that time to think about what you already have and really take the time to appreciate those things that you have, because that can sometimes even make it easier to go through a rough time rather than set yourself up for feeling bad about everything and feeling like you need to have more, and then maybe do things that you wouldn't have normally wanted to do just because you're trying to make up for how you're feeling due to whatever situation you're going through. And then kind of just some general tips to kind of increase the contentment in your life. Just kind of take time to think of all the basic things you have to be grateful for. The basics, like food, shelter, transportation. If you think about it, our basic needs are pretty minimal. And when we consider how much more we have that's like above and beyond covering those basic needs, it can really kind of give you a different perspective on things. Another thing you could try is just to kind of try and simplify. Sometimes when we have too much, it can be really hard to appreciate what we have because it can just be kind of overwhelming. So if you can scale back a little bit and only try and keep the things in your life that you really love, it can really help increase your feeling of contentment. That could be with your clothing, it could be with your cooking utensils, it could be with your schedule. Are you trying to do too much and you can't really even take the time to appreciate the things that you really enjoy? Just kind of overall simplifying can really help us keep around the things that we really enjoy and really increase our feeling of contentment. And then, of course, taking time to practice gratitude and just being more thankful for what you have, because the less you feel the need to replace and upgrade what you already have, the more content you will feel. You don't want to be always feeling in a constant state that everything around you needs to be replaced or upgraded. And again, like I said, contentment does not mean that we need to be complacent. There is room for growth and improvement in our lives while still appreciating where we're at today. No one wants to spend their lives living in the future hoping for someday when you might have a different situation. So just remember to really enjoy where you're at today while you still make plans for the things that you want later on. So that's really all I have to say on this topic. I hope that this will kind of help you just kind of stop and think about, the things that you have and, just kind of practice that feeling of contentment and being at peace where you are. And then kind of maybe a little bit more slowly think about the things that you want for your future and do them in a mindful and thoughtful way. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you back here next week. So thank you for checking in for this podcast episode. And don't forget, you can always email me with any questions or suggestions at lolasfrugallife@gmail.com. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at lolasfrugallife. And you can find a blog post for most of my episodes and definitely all of my meal plan episodes at lolasfrugallife.com. You can also join our private listeners group at facebook.com/groups/lolasfrugallife. And if you enjoy the show, please make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen from. And I would love it if you would screenshot the show and tag me on Instagram so I could see you're listening. Also, if you can please take a couple of seconds to rate and review the podcast. Those ratings and reviews are what help the show come up better in search results so that other people can find this podcast. So that will really help me in growing my audience. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have an awesome day.